Let's start with one of the ones that I'm more familiar with that I still don't freaking understand coming out of Virginia. A federal court comes in and enjoins, as in prohibits, the removal of non-citizens from the voter roll that have been expunged over the last several weeks and months. To steelman it, because from what I understand, apparently they found, I don't know, let's just say a few dozen people who were expunged whose citizenship status is unclear, which I also don't for the life of me understand. How are they not able to know who is a citizen and who is not? And how in the name of sweet holy hell does a federal judge come in and say you're not expunging from the voter rolls non-citizens who are bona fide non-citizens?
The key is there's a procedure in place under federal law to preclude states within 90 days of an election from doing any systematic purge of voter rolls. If you're going to remove people from the voter rolls within the 90-day time frame, it's supposed to be an individualized analysis consistent with state law. Part of the voter purge outside the 90-day window is not being contested, challenged, or reversed. Only the one that is within the 90-day window, which is far fewer voters.
Okay, which means that they don't have enough time because it's within 90 days to, if it was done erroneously, to retract.
Correct. That's the concern. They're allowed to do any individualized review. It's designed to deal with people who flag something and just remove everybody without doing any deep dive into the individual that's on the voter rolls. It's to avoid those issues popping up right on the eve of the election. The decision is not nearly as impactful as Youngkin and others made it out to be. This was just smart politics by Youngkin and conservatives and Republicans. And Biden took the bait. The goal was, let's purge some names that we're pretty confident are not citizens and do it in such a way that we get the Biden administration to sue us so that it becomes front page news.
That they're suing to keep non-citizens on the voter rolls. And if I understand correctly now, is it 1,600 within the 90 days, which is obviously not going to be determinative on the election?
Well, in fact, you dig into the court's order, and the court's order says you can still remove anybody that's not qualified. You just need to make sure it's an individualized review, not a systematic review. Mm-hmm. That's literally it. The nature of the decision is not that big at all. It was just brilliant politics played by the Virginia governor and Republicans to highlight an issue that makes the Biden administration look bad. Now, one case that is impactful is the one brought by Texas Attorney General Paxton against the Biden administration, that here's how the rules work for citizenship. Federal law prohibits states from requiring proof of citizenship to register for federal elections. At the same time, it makes it illegal for non-citizens to vote. The way in which it's all enforced is the state has multiple access to all kinds of databases to confirm that someone is a citizen. The other thing they can do is they can request from DHS confirmation that someone is a citizen. What's happening is DHS is refusing to do that under federal law. So that's where you have more problematic concerns, is when that part of the gatekeeping process breaks down. And so Paxton is sued, asking a federal court, please force them to provide the information that we're requesting that federal law requires they give us to confirm whether or not this group of voters is for sure a citizen. And so that suit will be interesting to watch because it might have ramifications. If the DHS loses that one, they would be forced to disclose it in other jurisdictions as well. That's where one area where the legal system is breaking down. As some other people who wrote into us were asking about, the other areas of great risk in the election are mail-in votes, and there's twofold ways to flag those. One is to see whether or not the address of the voter that requested the ballot and returned the ballot, whether that address is a legitimate address. You can look at change of address flags. You can look at, is it a post office box? Is it a building where everybody's registered to vote, but it turns out to be a church? Is that legitimate or not? Just having a flag doesn't mean it's an illegitimate vote. And there are a range of these people had asked whether or not there's people out there paying attention to that. The answer is yes, there is. The second area of concern is people returning ballots that they didn't fill out. It's not really them. Somebody else did it in some manner. There's been criminal cases out of Iowa and Georgia in the last 2 weeks where people were trying to do things in postal offices or otherwise trying to prevent ballots from getting properly either distributed or returned. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, they caught 2,500 people or 2,500 ballots that were fake ballots. How did they catch them? Signature matches, in particular, address checks, in particular, voter registration confirmation checks. Those are the three mechanisms by which you can detect and pick up some aspects of the fraud. So there are cases all across the country. And of course, Trump keeps publicizing that if anybody tries it again and he wins, that there will be great legal consequence to anybody who does so. That's basically a deterrent message. is what he's trying to send. Those cases continue to, and investigations continue to develop. Now, it's different than what James O'Keefe exposed in Arizona.
California, I'm just trying to Google it right now. It's not urban legend, it's not misrepresentation that they actually did pass a law that makes it illegal to ask for ID on election day.
Yeah. Well, at the voter polls, right.
Yeah, but
I mean, the thing is, almost all ballots in California are sent by mail-in anyway. It's like 90, 95%. Almost nobody votes in person in California anymore.
No, but if you go to vote in person and you show up and what are they? If you voted by mail already, then they have your name scratched off.
Almost most jurisdictions are that way. You just walk in, give them your name, and they give you the ballot.
But then how do they know that you haven't already received one by mail and sent that one? How do they know you're not voting twice?
They don't. They can check it later. Are there two ballots that came back in a certain person's name? Because they do check your name off as having voted in person.
Okay.
That's how you're able to track. That's how you see all these data, early voting trackers. That's how. Once you vote, you go into the database that you voted and how you voted. And so if you show up a second time voting, that triggers a siren, if you will.
But when you show up in person, the ballot doesn't have your name on it. It's not individualized.
No, not all. Just a generic ballot. You show up, they check that you're registered, and then depending on what state, like here in Vegas, it's a more like a machine than a paper ballot, and you mark things on the machine, but then you get to see what it looks like, and they print out a receipt of what your ballot is, so you know what it is before it goes in.
Okay. And now, so that at least quells not some concern, but I guess it would be easy to track that type of double voting, and that would be the only real risk. Or if they somehow had, I don't know, a list of people who didn't mail in a ballot and they can get their names and have illegals or somebody vote in their name.
Part of the Trump election contest from 2020 in Georgia was people we were able to confirm, or Trump's team, I was part of it for a period of time, confirmed voted in multiple states or voted in multiple counties. And what that often is that isn't the person who did it. Somebody did it on their behalf. So that's how you track like change of address forms and things like that. Those are not perfect mechanisms, but one way, if you're going to try to steal an election, you do something with voter registration, either to change their address without them knowing, or they changed their address and you have access to the old address and you request a ballot at that old address, things like that. And then that's how you can find people voting in multiple states, voting in multiple counties within the same state. Somebody else was doing the voting on their behalf. It's very rarely that person is trying to vote over and over again.